Welcome back to another edition of the Review of Champions. I'm your host, Lord Deathman, and on this week's episode of What If, we get double trouble in what if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands. Please join us as we review the fourth episode of Marvel's What If. We're going to get right into it in just a second, so sit tight. But in the meantime, as always, we'd like to ask you to request, to plead, to cajole. Be sure to like this video if you like it and share it on all of the various platforms that you can, and subscribe to it if you like what we do here. That's it. That's the whole line. And we appreciate the support for the channel. It really does help us out. So we've got a bigger panel than we had last week here, and I'm going to dive right into it just with a quick round of introductions. So champions, you know the routine. When you hear your name, go ahead and just acknowledge the folks at home. Grandmaster.
Hello, people.
Right on. Taylor.
Hello, everybody.
And Mr. Jeff Sloboda. How are you doing today?
What's up, everybody?
All right. You guys ready to talk some What If? Episode number 4 here. I want to start, obviously, going around the table and getting your initial thoughts on the episode. Nothing too long, nothing too lengthy. I just want to get your impressions here, what you thought of the episode in general. I'll start with Grandmaster.
I think it's the best episode of the lot. I also think that I keep saying that every week. Well, that's a good thing. Another amazing episode. I will definitely talk a little bit more about it later, but I want to leave it at that for now.
All right. We've had a couple of strong episodes here. So for you to say that this is the best of the group so far, you're saying it's better than the Star-Lord T'Challa episode. You're saying it's better than Captain Carter. And then you're also saying that it is better than What If the Earth Lost Its Mightiest Heroes, right? You're absolutely sure about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it has a lot of stuff that I like.
All right. Fair enough. Taylor, initial impressions on the episode?
It was a great episode. I liked it a lot. I liked the premise. The animation was really cool. And the whole story. It was very well done. It's great.
Are you putting it, like Grandmaster, at the top of the 4 episodes that we have so far?
Well, they're all really, really good so far. I'm going to put this one not at the top, near the top.
Okay. What's your favorite of the 4 so far, though?
I think the last one, the What If they lost their mightiest heroes. I think
that was a good one
at this point.
Really finely tuned and well constructed in terms of the plot and the overall concept and the idea. Jeff, let's get your initial thoughts on episode 4.
Well, just to start off with the bounce off Taylor, I probably would go with the last episode as well. It would probably be my favorite out of the 4. The What If We Lost, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I felt like that was a really tight episode. But the Doctor Strange one was really interesting. I did think it was a lot of fun. Like Grandmaster said, the animation was great. Interesting story, different concept than we've seen yet on What If. Different direction. I felt like it was really cool to see the Ancient One again. And it was really great that they brought back Tilda Swinton, like we talked about before on the MCU's Bleeding Edge, Lord Deathman. And Benedict Cumberbatch did really great voice work on that episode, I thought.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. And as always, again, with this British invasion in the MCU, as an American, it starts to get a little grating to find all these competent and capable Englishmen. And Benedict Cumberbatch is definitely in that group of guys. And again, their background, their theatrical training always kind of informs them in a certain way. And no job is too big or small. They're really here for it, and they always put in 100%. So I think some of their American counterparts here in the business could learn a few lessons from them. But you're right. Benedict Cumberbatch really sells the work that he has to do in this episode, and he brings the level of everybody else who's in the episode up as well. But I'm going to go back around the table. This time we're going to look a little in depth into what you thought in the episode. Give me some of your highlights. Give me anything that you might not have disliked, that you might not have liked in this episode. And let's take the discussion in that direction. I will start this time with Taylor. Highlights, big moments in there that really stood out to you, and dislikes if there was anything that you didn't care for.
Well, I liked everything about it. I liked that it wasn't like in place of the original Doctor Strange movie. It wasn't like a story that overwrote that one. Rather, something different happened at the beginning, but he still went through the same arc that he went through in the original movie. He went all the way up and defeated Dormammu. And then after that, he did something different, trying to bring back his lost love, which had, of course, was the thing that changed at the beginning. So I thought that was interesting how they didn't completely overwrite the original movie, just kind of added something, a change to it that then added more to his story afterwards. It created a whole new story for him afterwards. So I thought that was interesting. I thought the part where he learned how to get enough power to change this universal constant of her death, where he was absorbing all those crazy mythical creatures and gnomes and dragons and stuff. I thought that was very interesting. And I thought one of the most interesting parts was when he actually spoke directly to the Watcher. I guess the Sorcerer Supreme can do that at some point. I guess if he absorbs dragons. I don't know what the rules are. But I thought that was really interesting, that he actually had interaction with the Watcher himself. And then the whole story itself, of course, is very, very tragic and very, very well written. So those are my highlights right there, and I don't have any lowlights.
Lowlights. Yeah, this is an episode that's full of lights, be they mystical lights, magical lights, very well animated too. And I have to dovetail on your notes about this episode in terms of one of the big likes for me was also the Watcher and Doctor Strange interacting with each other. And I think in my own headcanon, that happened because he finally sort of absorbed all of this power and was reaching this kind of cosmic level where he was aware of the fact that he was being observed by this all-powerful being, and now could kind of have a conversation with him. So I don't know if that's canon or if that's really what caused it in the episode, but this was an episode that was filled with heart. You got that tragedy in the story. So even though there's a lot that's fantastic that takes place there, you still have this core of drama, which I think the series is doing a really good job of maintaining. But Jeff, what were your highlights for the episode?
Well, I do feel like, along with my highlights, I feel like there's definitely a separation I'm starting to notice between watching the animated episodes versus seeing like what we're used to with the live action, with Loki, with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, with WandaVision. I feel like the drama in the story in this Doctor Strange episode with Christine was not as played out as it could have been maybe in like a live action version. But as far as my highlights go with the episode, I felt like what I really thought was interesting was really especially the fact that we went to see Cagliostro. Like we've already talked about before, Lord Deathman, like, oh Ben, you're the one who pointed out that was Cagliostro the other night.
Yeah.
And what really gets me going with this episode is where this sets up, like eventually in the MCU, like where What If ties into the rest of the MCU in terms of, again, like Taylor said and like you already talked about, the fact that the Watcher actually was present and he actually spoke to the Watcher, Doctor Strange did, and that he was actually like acknowledged him being there and everything. I thought that was really interesting. It does bring questions to the table in terms of like how is that possible? Like you said, I guess he did reach like almost like a cosmic level at one point from ingesting all of these like mythical magical creatures. But I feel like bringing in the Cagliostro deal basically sets up eventually down the road Dracula. It sets up it plays into it, the fact that we already have the Darkhold in play now. And
right.
I see Doctor Strange being somebody who's going to be dealing with the Darkhold quite a bit. It sets up and brings up, like, for instance, the Vishante later on when we get into, like, Ghost Rider and more of like the
Midnight Suns.
Yeah, the Midnight Sun stuff. I feel like there's a connection to Doctor Doom with Cagliostro. Because of course that's Doctor Doom learned from Cagliostro, I believe, in the comic books. That's one of the ways that he used to try to get his mother back from the Hell Dimension. Was through Cagliostro. So I feel like that's the connection for me that really like stood out, was the fact that I can see the foreboding coming up in the MCU connecting to kind of like some of the premises that were brought into play in this episode.
Yeah. Agreed 100%. The Cagliostro connection really was there for the comic book fans, right? And you're right, it does hint, the whole episode really does hint at the potential of the Doctor Strange universe and mythos for its horror connections. So they're really setting us up for, in the Multiverse of Madness, to be something a little closer to a horror movie, because some of the transformations and transfigurations you see Doctor Strange go through in this episode, he sort of becomes part insect and part rodent, and all of the things that he's absorbing in terms of taking their power, he becomes this kind of hellish amalgamation of all of those different entities. And I was like, wow, this is on the darker side, I mean, Jeff, did you get that feeling?
Yeah, definitely. I like, again, I think that's a really great connection that you make. I feel like, in a way, it almost kind of gives you an idea of what in the Multiverse of Madness might look like, except animated. I wouldn't go as far as what Alexis was saying the other night in terms of like how she'd love to see that exact episode done like live action or something like that in a film. I wouldn't go that far, but I feel like things really took a dark turn. By the time that we got to the end of the episode, Christine was physically like disturbed by seeing him, so he definitely looked pretty hellish there at the end.
Yeah, he did, and there were lots of Easter eggs for Doctor Strange readers there. But I'm going to turn to Grandmaster to get your highlights for the episode. What did you like the most about this particular episode? And did you have any dislikes at all?
No, I actually didn't have any dislikes, so I'm not going to go into that. What I actually liked the most was at the beginning. It felt a bit like that old comedy movie with Bill Murray, Groundhog Day, where he tried to change the course of what happened, of course, with Christine. It really reminded me of Bill Murray trying to escape that one day he had to relive over and over and over again. So that was immediately something that came to my mind. And what I really appreciated is seeing Strange versus Strange. Actually, it felt to me like a man who was fighting his inner demon. And which basically was but then the inner demon had a corporeal form. And I really liked that they went really, really, really dark. The end of the world, actually. And it's the darkest thing the MCU has done to date. And there was no hero to save the day. Actually, the hero became the villain. And it really spoke to me on all kinds of levels. And I thought it was very cleverly written. And the animation was beautiful. And Benedict Cumberbatch playing Doctor Strange, but also for the second time a villain in the MCU. Yeah, that I thought was also great. And like Taylor said, they didn't tread back on the Doctor Strange movie itself, which is one of my favorite origin comic book movies of all time. And I like that they kept that. They kept that lore in MCU, but they made a nice twist on it. And yeah, it was, to me, it was just great.
Yeah. I do, since you guys had no low points in this episode, I feel honor bound to bring one up. And all around, it was generally a very good episode. In fact, it was an excellent episode. But I did notice that when they brought in the Ancient One and they were doing the animation on her mouth in particular, there was something that looked a little too soft, and like her lips were not lining up with her dialogue quite well. But other than that, the animation throughout the episode is just spectacular, and probably the best of the entire series, because you have to go to these mystical places and do these morphs between these different animals, and you have to show all this these magical powers being used. So very different than the action-oriented episode previously. We just haven't gotten anything like this now that we're in the world of Doctor Strange. They borrow a lot from the comic books, which I really appreciated watching this episode. So, yeah, just one little minor thing. But after you watch the episode like 3 times in a row, which is basically what I did, you're bound to find something that was a little bit off. But I tend to agree with the panel on this one. But I'm going to go around the table, and we're going to see what the ratings for this episode was. We got a little bit of a preview of that at the beginning of the episode, with people trying to rank this in terms of where it is in the 4 episodes that have already occurred. But I'm going to start with Taylor in terms of your overall grade for this episode of What If?
Well, it's really hard. It's really close to a 10. I have to codify it. Not 9.5 maybe out of 10. And so far, I think Agent Carter or Captain Carter and The Death of Earth's Mightiest Heroes were both 10 out of 10. And I think the one with T'Challa and this one are like just below that at 9.5 out of 10. I mean, they can't get much better, any of them.
Right. And this is a series that really rewards MCU fans, right? So when you watch What If, you're probably pretty well versed on the MCU as it is, Taylor. So my question for you becomes, I know we're really enjoying this as people who have watched those films in the past, but do you think that these episodes are really standing alone just for people who are casuals? You might not have seen the first Doctor Strange, or maybe you saw it a long time ago and you don't remember it. Is this something that still stands up under those conditions?
I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, it's very possible for someone who's never even watched any of them to turn on these stories and watch them. I mean, all of us, saw stuff for the first time at some point in our lives, and we may not have started at the beginning, So I can see certainly people enjoying this, people who appreciate, sci-fi and fantasy. This particular episode was very fantasy-like, and people who appreciate animation can certainly step in. And I'm sure, casual MCU fans would have no problem enjoying these.
Yeah, I agree. Because even if you haven't seen Doctor Strange and you don't know where this episode diverges from what you saw in the Doctor Strange movie, you still have a pretty interesting story that has a lot of heart. It's really easy to tell what's going on. He's lost a loved one and he's going to these extremes to learn the mystic arts to find a way to bring her back. The concepts are laid out fairly well in an interesting way. So I hope that this series is getting as much traction amongst MCU fans as it is amongst casuals. So I agree with you 100% though. But Jeff, can you share with us what your rating of this episode would be?
Well, I guess I probably would give it a 8 3/4 stars, 8.75, I'd say. Pretty good though. I think that Grandmaster makes a really great comparison with Groundhog Day. I didn't even think about that when I watched it, but that's a classic film. I love that movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, but great film with Bill Murray. No, I'll tell you, what you mentioned, Lord Deathman, I wonder myself how this is playing out with like the general public, like how they're doing with this series so far. I have no way of really knowing, because I mean I don't know anybody currently personally in my life that doesn't know the MCU that's watching it. But I think that honestly, like I could see how maybe a casual fan watching these episodes, seeing this Doctor Strange episode might make them want to go watch the actual live action movie, if anything.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good point.
Yeah, I could see it going that direction. And we don't know how far this whole thing's going to go with the multiverse and whatnot. There's a lot of rumors right now with Spider-Man 3 and Doctor Strange, and is that really Doctor Strange? Is it Mephisto? And yada, yada, yada. And what I really liked was, like what Taylor said, I believe, where we saw Doctor Strange taking on Doctor Strange. I think that could be foreboding for the future, where we might end up seeing multiverse versions of Doctor Strange later on. I don't necessarily know that I want us to go in that direction with the MCU. Maybe that's a little bit too far, but we might get there.
Well, I have to say this to you in particular, Jeff. I have to ask this question of you because we touched on it the other night when we reviewed this on the MCU's Bleeding Edge. But you know that I have this headcanon piece in which I think that Strange Supreme, the darker version of Doctor Strange, might be the very same Doctor Strange from the No Way Home trailer, thus explaining some of his really weird behavior. Are you still ready to back me up on that, or do you think I'm too far out on a limb?
I don't know. I think you're 50-50 on there. I think there's definitely something tangible there. I just don't know if Marvel's prepared to go in that direction yet with Spider-Man 3. Just because I feel like, again, this falls into the whole idea of, I don't want to see them overdo the multiverse. But I think that there's definitely some. I mean, hey, I saw the trailer and he did seem very different than he normally does. Like even more aloof than he usually is. Strange.
Yeah. He was very strange,
Yes.
To coin a phrase there. But I asked the question only because we've seen the concept of the variants on Loki. Now, this Doctor Strange separation wasn't exactly variants because the Ancient One kind of split him in half in the same universe, which I found like totally amazing. So we'll see. But I think that Marvel Studios wants to connect What If to the MCU in some substantial way. So I personally wouldn't be surprised if we found that a character from the What If series translated into live action, became that variation of their character. But, always good chatting about this stuff with you, Jeff, and I could talk about it forever, but I'm going to head on over to the Grandmaster to get your rating.
Well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit on the former episodes because I cannot go up all the time. I guess the first two are like a 7 to me. And the third one would be an 8, and this would be a 9. I'm trying to be a little bit conservative with my rating because you don't know what's coming. We literally don't know what's coming.
Right.
And I'm actually on board with with your headcanon, my Lord of Death.
No Way Home is Strange Supreme.
Yeah, well, there's definitely something weird going on. I didn't want to use your pun again, but
It wasn't that good a pun.
No,
it's okay.
It was so intentional. I can't go along with that. But anyway, no. But I also, like I said in our trailer talk, I definitely feel that this is a different Strange than the Strange we saw before. He also looks different in some way. That's not the attire. It's his complex. His complexity. How do you say that in English?
His complexion.
His complexion. Yes,
he does look a little darker. I think he had 5 o'clock shadow
and a little bit paler. then
Well, I know he had some
Something
dark
to do with
marks under his eyes as well.
Background too, Grandmaster. You think maybe that background with all the snow and everything maybe influenced it?
Yeah, that could be, but to me, he felt his look felt a bit different than our regular Stephen Strange, and his behavior was also a little bit different. So I'm totally on board with your headcanon, Lord Deathman. That's what I wanted to say. But I would rate it a 9 out of 10, and backtracking the others like the rating I just gave, because
I feel like this is grading on a curve, but I'll allow it.
Yeah, I kind of have to, because otherwise I'm getting into the triple digit at a certain moment, and I did that once with I think it was the Falcon and the Winter Soldier or WandaVision. I'm not sure, but can't keep doing that. Otherwise, people stop and to take me seriously, and I can't have that.
Well, yes, we can't not take the Grandmaster seriously in the games here, especially when we're in the arena doing the reviews. But that being said, I totally get where you're coming from, and it does seem like this series has been intentionally arranged so that the episodes kind of keep getting better, right? No one wants to start off with the very best episode that they have and then have everything slide downhill. So I totally get what you're saying. The episodes are objectively getting better and better, but I think that there was a little bit of design in that system. But my question for you before we get to any closing remarks on the episode is, Tentacles guy from this episode, is that Shuma Gorath? What do you think? Or is What If just in love with tentacles and squid and like Japanese food?
I think it's the same creature as we saw in the first episode. That's what I think.
And we all suspect that was Shuma Gorath.
Yeah.
Although, Jeff, keep me honest here. Do we see Shuma's eyeball in the first episode to really say that was him? No, we did not, right?
No, and I can't remember the name right now, but there is that mythical creature from the Asgardian lore that the Hydra symbol is based on, that looks just like that tentacled monster. And that the only reason why I don't know if that's Shuma Gorath is because I'm so used to seeing Shuma Gorath in the comics with the eye.
Right. The eye always gives him away right at the center. And then they showed another tentacled villain, so I'm like, okay, maybe they're trying to Shuma. We got to start the chant there. But at the very least, I do think it is the same creature from the first episode, Captain Carter, that we're seeing again here in Doctor Strange. It's just too much of a coincidence that we're getting tentacles again. But regardless of who this individual is, quick question just for the panel in general. Of all of the creatures that Strange Supreme conjures in order to absorb them, did you guys recognize any of those creatures? They all seemed like new creations to me.
Yeah.
There was a insectoid Doctor Strange that he stole his cloak of levitation. I was like, first you're going to absorb the guy and then you're going to steal his cape? That seemed really out there. But yeah, none of them looked familiar to me from any Easter eggs, but I just wanted to check with the panel to see if I'd missed any.
The first one was a garden gnome, so I recognized him from my neighbor's yard.
From Asgard, right? From the lawns on Asgard.
No, I didn't recognize any creature.
No.
All right, well.
No.
We will likely have to wait until we see Strange Supreme and No Way Home to find out who any of those creatures were. But let me take some closing remarks here. Is there anything else you wanted to add to this, Jeff, in terms of the discussion? Anything that piqued your interest before we close out?
No, I mean, just again, I was kind of surprised that the Darkhold didn't pop up in the episode, or maybe it did. Like maybe Strange did actually. Maybe he had because at that. Remember we had that discussion, Lord Deathman, about the whole time period that goes on where that the Supreme Doctor Strange there goes to Cagliostro back in time and spends like however many centuries or whatever researching and and taking in these beings. You got to figure during that time period, that's right when Cagliostro would have probably had the Darkhold. So maybe they didn't want to show it. Maybe they felt like that would be too much for like the casual fan for them to drop that. But I have a feeling that there were probably a lot of mystical books and like magical books and stuff like that in that library that Strange was probably using for spells and like learning new magic and stuff like that. So it would have been interesting. I would have liked to have seen the Darkhold pop up. But again, I really think that this is one of those episodes with What If where I really feel a direct connection to the MCU. Like, that's really my main thing, is that I really see this as being like foreboding in a way. Like, there's aspects to the episode where I see, things that could be happening in the future of the MCU that relate to this in terms of making that connection
Exactly.
with What If and the MCU. And I think that you're right, Lord Deathman. I think they do eventually in some way want to connect this series to the live action.
We'll see. I've been wrong before, but it would be really, really, really cool if this series connected to the MCU, the future of the MCU in some tangible way. But thank you for those remarks, Jeff. Grandmaster, any closing remarks on the episode? Anything stood out to you? Okay. That was a definitive no. And Taylor, how about you?
Yeah, just overall on the series so far, I really like how they're able to do such, very different things and even different styles, the writing and everything. It really gives their writers an opportunity to really, stretch their legs and do things very different, to the point, like in this episode, it's an alternate universe. I guess all of the what ifs are theoretically in alternate universes, but this is a universe that actually got destroyed. And a lot of times in movies and stuff, they talk about it's going to be the end of the universe, but it never actually happens. They always find a way to stop it. Well, this time, that universe does not exist anymore. It was destroyed because Doctor Strange did a bad thing and couldn't stop it.
Right. And he lived. The villain, Strange Supreme, if you notice, he's in that cocoon at the end, and he totally survived. So not only did the universe get destroyed, but the bad guy managed to sidestep the end of the universe, if I'm remembering that correctly, guys. I'd
have to go back and watch that again.
Yeah, I think he does survive. He's in like this red cocoon sort of thing. But yeah, we'll have to backtrack that. If I'm wrong about that, you listeners at home, please feel free to dive into the comic books and tell me that I misinterpreted that one. But first off, I'd just like to start off by thanking the panel here. And you guys at home, I'd like to be sure to ask you to check us out on Twitter and on Facebook, all the other social media channels that you can find us on. I think we're on most of them. We'll have the tags in the description. Consider also joining the discussion on the forum at sakar.freeforums.net. When you join the message board, you actually become a champion. Well, we start you off as a prospect, but it does give you the opportunity to jump on the podcast live with us and talk about your theories and ideas about what if and anything else that we're talking about in fandom. So thanks for joining us, and, remember to be safe out there, and we will all see you in the next one.